The Edmonton Oilers may be trailing 2-1 in the Stanley Cup Final, but Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers is here for an friendly-ish conversation about the state of the series, what we're looking for going into game number 4, the rest of the series, and what's happened so far, all on today's crossover edition of Locked On Oilers and Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special crossover edition of Locked On Oilers and Locked On Panthers. I am Nick Zararis, the host of Locked On Oilers. That is Armando Velez, the host of Locked On Panthers. And we want to thank everyone that is making our shows their first listen of the day. Both Locked On Oilers and Locked On Panthers are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we've got your teams covered every day. We've got a jam-packed show for you. We're going to start our episode talking about how the series has played out so far, just the drop-down 10,000-foot view about how things are progressing. In our second segment, we're going to open it up a little bit more, specifically about how things can change tactically, strategically, matchups, and then we will tie a bow on today's show, talking specifically about game number 4, which will be taking place tonight, and the series as we progress. Armando, my friend, the first question I have for you as far as the series has gone so far, what do you feel changed most dramatically between game 1 and then 2 and 3? Because game 1, easily the best the Oilers have played, not a coincidence, the one game they've won so far. But as the series has gone along, it's very clear that something has adjusted for Florida, and it's enabled them to play significantly better hockey. What would you put your finger on as being the biggest difference?
I think the biggest difference for the Panthers that I believe is the fact that they're able to just get in on their forecheck, and the fact that they're able to just continue to get the puck out of their own D zone a lot quicker with those one touch passes for them. They're not a team that likes to take the puck out on their own. They're waiting for someone to be around the middle towards their defensive blue line and to just get it out a little quickly, and then try to at least get a little bit of space and then shoot it in, and the dump and chase game for them. And that's where they're able to easily get more on their forecheck. It's a lot of those more transitions. It's not really a lot. It's not really in the case of odd man rushes for them, but I think that's really been a big difference in how they've been doing it, and to just get more of that time in the offensive zone. It hasn't been a lot of those big swings in the Edmonton Oilers' direction when it comes to just the possession metrics. So I think that's been key.
And going off of that, the other thing that's really jumped out at me through these first 3 games is the volume of set plays the Panthers have out of dead plays, whether it's off of a zone entry or off of a faceoff. They always do a very solid job where if they win the faceoff, which they've done a really good job of so far in this series, they've been great on the faceoff circle. They always find a way to create space, whether it's the wingers alternating with each other, whether it's just the straight up tie up in the middle and then the winger coming across on their strong hand to be able to get a shot off of what's effectively a one-timer. Is that something that's been consistent, or is that a wrinkle that's been added over the course of, say, a playoff run or this series in particular, just because they've been so dominant in the faceoff zone,
especially because of how speedy their wingers are, especially 2 guys like an Evan Rodriguez or Carter Verhaeghe who could shoot from the outside, whether it's between the hashes or right at the circles. So that key draw has been huge for the Panthers, and just how they're able to just quickly tap it, or even if it's not the wingers, the fact that the blue liners can walk along, and then those wingers, when they're doing those crosses, whether they're curling up and the defense for the opposition is going towards the center, that gives an opportunity for those second chance, and also even if they're still in the middle of their skating stride up the gut, that's a little bit of the taking away the eyes of the goaltender that has truly worked in the Panthers' favor.
Oh, yeah. The Panthers, I would say that's been the biggest weakness and the biggest vulnerability they've exploited so far in this series is the Oilers just haven't done a great job of clearing the net front, and the Panthers do a great job of even double and triple screening where they have wingers coming across where they're intersecting with each other. They're creating 2 points of visibility they're taking away from Skinner. I mean, the first Marchand goal in Game 3, he was guessing. He had no idea where that puck was, assumed it was coming because he had no idea where it was. was. He threw his body in where he thought the puck was coming from. Marchand had a wide open net. I think the Panthers have done a really good job. And frankly, I think what makes it so all the more frustrating is it's so simple. The Panthers make this look really easy because it's so straight line, because it's simple passes, because it's a really straightforward game. They're not asking anyone to do anything crazy, not a lot of plays outside of structure other than those set face-off plays, but they are doing a fantastic job of making the Oilers uncomfortable and doing it in a way
just comes down to
where it's all the more frustrating because you know the play the Oilers need to make.
Phrases that these players talk about when it comes to their mid-game interviews, pre-game, is just trying to about going north-south. And I feel like we're touching a little bit on the same subject of when we had our mid-series preview last year about how the Panthers have just forced sometimes McDavid and Draisaitl to go around in circles in the offensive zone. And I was surprised about this stat when I saw it of the amount of points that Connor McDavid has in 5 Stanley Cup Final games in Florida. In Florida, he only has 1 5-on-5 point throughout the 5 games. So when the Panthers keep it at 5-on-5, it's just been so beneficial of just how they're able to continue to get set, even if they do lose the initial draw in their D zone.
And the one last thing off of that, and this is something I was talking about on today's show as well, that's the peril of not being on the road. You know, the Panthers can play matchup, and something that teams have done to varying degrees of success this year, and in the playoffs last year, the Canucks did a good job of this. It's hard for Connor to hurt you if he's playing defense. You know, if the Panthers have the puck in the offensive zone for his 40 seconds, minute and a half he's out there, he can't burn you. And even if you don't generate a whole lot of dangerous offense, if you make McDavid chase the puck around for 45 seconds or so in the defensive zone, you've won the shift. Even if you don't get anything really productive out of it, if he's not on offense, you've won the minutes. And the Panthers have strung together enough of those shifts that they have found ways to make it where McDavid is ineffective. I mean, they had 2 high danger chances in the entire game in Game 3, the Oilers. Their best scoring chances were Trent Frederick, Evander Kane, and Connor Brown, and only one of those 3 hit the net. I mean, the Panthers have done a really great job of making the Oilers play defense, and it's put them in a really disadvantageous position where now we're talking about, well, how do we get this team going? Is it a goalie change? Is it bringing Troy Stetcher back into the lineup? And all of that sets up very nicely for what we're going to talk about in our second segment, where we're going to pivot to talking about matchups, individual player performances, and what we might want to change going into game number 4 and the future right after this break. Source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily nutritional value. Plus, they're packed with that ultra important fiber for gut health and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shell variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days when I'm here at my desk working on the show, doing research or editing, or if it's the end of the day and I'm trying to squeeze in a last bit of protein to hit my macros for the day, they're a great go-to. Or if you're old school and you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein that provides all 9 essential amino acids. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out with Armando and I on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers and Locked On Panthers. And talking about matchups and strategy, something that really jumped out at me while I was doing my research for today's show. The Oilers are having basically a miserable time in this series anytime Evan Bouchard's not on the ice. He has effectively been their only defenseman capable of game control. I mean, when McDavid's been out there without Bouchard, he's been out there for 2 goals against. I think it's 6-4 overall in goals for with McDavid and Bouchard together. And then when neither is out there, they also have a negative goal share. So I said this yesterday on my show. I said this on Sunday when I called into a show. The Oilers desperately need one of their defensemen to step up in this series to really augment whatever they're trying to do offensively. It would make sense if it was Evan Bouchard, being that he's their best offensive defenseman. But right now, I think as much as we want to talk about the Oilers needing to score more, I personally feel that their defense needs to pick up some of the slack, because it can't just be we need to score 5 goals against Sergei Bobrovsky in this Florida defense. The Oilers need to do more defensively to not need 5 or 6 goals to win. I mean, they should have probably, if you score 4 goals against the Florida Panthers the way they did in game 2, you probably should win the game. But their defense, their goaltending, it's been, I wouldn't say a major letdown, but it's definitely a cause for concern so far.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the shot share for Evan Bouchard when he's on the ice, 40-21 at 5-on-5. So, and there's only one person who's above him in that category, and that's Corey Perry. And also, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is up there as well. And to think that he's not even taking faceoffs right now, who Ryan Nugent-Hopkins right now is a game time decision. So definitely, Chris Knobloch has already shuffled some of the D pairs in from game 2 to game 3, putting Klimberg in that second pair, putting another right-handed shot up there. So now you're trying to put in likely another right-handed shot in Troy Stetcher up there, so that it also helps whenever it comes to the protecting the puck at the blue line, which the Panthers, like I mentioned, they're a team that has been thriving on getting those those quick one-touch passes out of their end. So that's another thing about hopefully for the Panthers able to still get it out. And for the Oilers, I'm sure that they're still trying to look for an answer when it comes to just the protecting of the net front, because you're looking at a lot of the goals that the Panthers have scored. It's just really been about those 50-50 battles that they have been winning when it comes to, especially on the half walls and in the corners.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things about the Panthers. I've likened them to fighting against quicksand or fighting against a boa constrictor. The harder you struggle against them, the more it feels like you're drowning. It's really that's how they sneak up on people. Like, it sounds dumb to say about a team that's gone to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, but they hang 2 or 3 on you in a blink and the game's over. You go down 4-1 and you tell yourself, well, we got to score 4 straight goals against a team that just scored 4 straight goals on us. That's a pretty difficult proposition. The other question the Oilers have to ask themselves here is, what do we have at our disposal that we can do to improve our situation? Is that playing 11-7? Is that pulling a forward out, setting Stetcher back in, because Stetcher and Nurse were so effective through the first 2.5 rounds before Mattias Ekholm came back? Does that mean inserting Jeff Skinner for someone and getting another forward with a little more offensive ability in his game to try and create some offense? And it is a luxury that you have players as good as Troy Stetcher and Jeff Skinner as your first guys out of the press box. But at a certain point, you mentioned Nuge, who's still playing reasonably well with a banged up whatever, because it's the playoffs. We're not going to know what he's actually hurt with until the playoffs are over. But you have a player who is physically compromised. You are struggling to score, and you need anything to get a spark going. And I was just talking about the defense. If you have the convictions to go 11-7, and I know statistically teams that go 11-7 really don't have good win-loss records, which I find very interesting why that's the case. But you can do that. You can insert Skinner for one of the forwards. You can go back to the defensive pairs you were running earlier in the playoffs. The best defense the Oilers played was when Brett Kulak was playing with Evan Bouchard as the Mattias Ekholm replacement. Could you look at something like reuniting those two? They had a 7-1 goal differential through the first 2.5 series up until Ekholm came back, where they outscored opponents 7-1. They had a dominant share of the shots, and you have that in your back pocket. But at the same time, you want to keep Ekholm and Bouchard together because that's clearly your best pair. Unfortunately, the Oilers just have a lot of questions as far as what they want to do. It's a luxury to have these questions because some teams just don't have the depth where you can bring a guy like Skinner or Troy Stetcher back in. But sitting here right now, the Oilers have a lot of questions, and we haven't even talked about the goaltending yet. And I know we're going to talk about that in the next segment, but it's a lot of questions. And when you're down in a series, those questions, they start to multiply in the permutations in your head of, could you play this guy with that guy? And you're looking for a solution, and you don't want to make a mistake, which is why I know some coaches are reticent to change things, even if they're not going particularly well.
Yeah, no doubt. And with possibility of going 11-7, it doesn't overly tax some of the defensemen that really are trying to fight off the Florida forecheck. And the thing is, when we did our mid-series crossover last year, it was after Game 4, the 8-1 loss for the Panthers there. This one's a little bit of a different situation of what we're talking about at the time, but the Panthers through these first 3 games, the one thing that has been extremely impressive, that what I've seen, is the fact that they are defending 200 feet so well. I mean, the 2 quick rush goals that the Oilers got from like the Evander Kanes and the Victor Arvidssons, both in games 1 and 2 respectively, have been because of the neutral zone play for the Panthers. It hasn't been those quick outs of the D zone for the Oilers and off a bad pinch by the Panthers. So that's also another adjustment that the Panthers have made, and it helps that their blue liners, like a Nate Schmidt, has 5 points in these three Stanley Cup Final games because of how quick the Panthers once again are at getting out of the zone.
And real quick on this, first speaking about matchups, when the Panthers are going like this, I find it fascinating that as soon as Greer was healthy, they put him back in. Do you think that's just a case of feel for the player, or do you think that's something else? Because a lot of coaches coming off of a win, they're not going to change things, but you reinsert Greer, who has, I think, 4 goals in the playoffs now, who's like a 12th or 13th forward. And I think that's a real testament to what the Panthers do. You know, we talked about in the series preview how they consistently plug and play guys from other teams and they find success because everything around them runs so smoothly. Why do the Panthers continually find these? Why does this work?
I mean, you think about AJ Greer's history through him playing. I mean, Calgary, Boston, even before coming to the Panthers. I mean, it's continuously finding these gems. And with Ryan Lomberg signing in free agency and getting a little bit of a raise, you had to find something along those lines, and that's really what AJ Greer is trying to fit to that build for the Panthers. Unfortunately, dealt with that injury in the Carolina series that unfortunately had him reinserted later in this series. But I mean, it's really the Panthers and knowing that they had to play their way. I mean, you saw in Game 3 how maybe the Edmonton Oilers were trying to play too much out of their structure, and now I'm expecting for them to go back into what they do best. I think the Game 3 is more of an outlier for this series, so I'm expecting a lot of the Edmonton Oilers of just not trying to play to the Florida Panthers' hands. I mean, and I don't expect them to get rattled as they did in Game 3.
I don't think so either. I think that was just a case of, at a certain point, and I was talking about this with somebody the other day, at a certain point, if you're one of the guys who's still on the bench, who hasn't been thrown out of the game, you start feeling a little left out, and you don't want to be one of the guys who didn't try and do something to get something going, which is a very like middle school way of thinking about this. But at a certain point, guys are like, okay, if everyone's getting tossed, I got to get tossed. I can't be one of the 5 guys left on the bench when there's no time left. I mean, there was that one shot at the end of the game of McDavid and Draisaitl, and they had a good 10 feet of space on the bench between them. How few guys were left after all of the ejections and the game misconduct. So that's another narrative. And I think it's really interesting that comes in the game before they have 2 days off. What is having 2 days off versus if we were on an every other day cycle due to those tensions, those emotions? So there's a whole lot more to get to. Unfortunately, we only have another 10 minutes or so of show, so we got a lot to get to. We will be right back on this crossover edition of Locked On Oilers and Locked On Panthers with what we expect going forward in the series. Be right back. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out with Armando and I on this crossover edition of Locked On Oilers and Locked On Panthers. And I will start things out with the question I have most for you. Why, or what should I say, has made the Panthers power play better in this series, and why am I actively worried about it going forward? I mean, it's very unconventional to see a first power play with 2D in today's NHL, even though the Oilers cribbed that at one point in Game 3, where they went to Wallman and Bouchard just as 2-point shots to try and create more space. What's changed for the Panthers power play year over year that's made them more effective this year versus last year, where they went to a really prolonged cold stretch in the playoffs? I remember at one point they had Oliver Ekman-Larsson running their power play in the playoffs last year. What's different for them on the man advantage?
I think it all comes down to the fact that they have the 2 forwards is because of where Aaron Ekblad was in the beginning of his career as the more offensive defenseman when he was drafted out of Barrie. out of the OHL back in 2014. And the thing is, he's not really used as a guy who is going to protect the blue line for the Panthers on the power play, and he could be that trigger man who could be on the left flank for him to give a little bit more of an angle to beat the goaltenders on the far side. But hey, if you need him to protect the blue line, he's there to do that job for Seth, and that's another great thing about just trading for Seth Jones. But here's the thing, Nick. That's not even the unit that's really getting going for the Panthers. Mostly, it's been the power play too for the Panthers. Two goals from Sam Bennett in this series, one from Carter Verhaeghe on the last one. I mean, and I gotta also give a lot of credit to Matthew Tkachuk, even though he hasn't lit the world on fire. I mean, he's the one getting in the blue paint. Even though people might see on the box score secondary assists, what he was able to do when he was feeding that puck towards Sam Reinhart before the fifth goal, it allowed the Edmonton Oilers to draw towards Sam Reinhart right before he got it to Aaron Ekblad. So usually I'm very hard on Matthew Tkachuk on force feeding those plays, but that feeding of that play resulted in just the weak side being open for the Panthers on that man advantage. And it's still crazy to think that the Panthers went into Game 3 at a 3.6% home power play right before those 3 power play goals. I mean, it's been a 40% on the road in these entire playoffs. And to flip the script a little bit at home, and the fact that it's multiple units. And to think, even Nate Schmidt for power play 2 in the offseason when we were talking to him, he spoke about how there's been times where he's been removed off of the power play, and he's been able to accept his role. To think that they don't really have a true man to run the power play on that second unit. Nate Schmidt has took the assignment quite well for the Panthers here.
Yeah, definitely, because that's something that's really jumped out year over year as far as big differences. Obviously, the Oilers' penalty kill was historically good last year, and it has been, I wouldn't say historically bad, but very bad. And I think part of it is the Panthers, the way they like to run their power play, where it's a lot of plays on one side of the ice, makes the Oilers very vulnerable, because the Oilers generally cheat to that one side of the ice. And like you said, on that fifth goal, I mean, that's as wide open as you're going to get once you get that pass across that center lane. And I do think the Oilers' inability to adjust there, whether it's personnel or even tactics at that point, it's been a real glaring problem. I mean, Mikael Granlund scored a goal in the one game the Stars won in that series in a very similar fashion, where the Stars got the pass across the center lane, and all Granlund had to do was walk it in, and you were able to beat Skinner high. And it's been really difficult because the power play is swinging these games. And obviously Game 3 got away from the Oilers, both in terms of the score and their emotions. But you got to find a way to change something, because right now that is swinging this series. The Panthers are running a power play at like 40% in this series, and that's just not going to cut it. You cannot get by with a 60% penalty kill and expect to win 4 straight series. Like, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and also for Skinner, the Panthers, one thing that they've been able to really get to him is that short side. Yeah. Usually the short side, for the shooters, the short side is the easier part to get to, but it's the fact that the Panthers are shooting from the left side and get an opportunity to get the blocker in. It's also the fact that he's letting them in on the top corner on the short side. That's another thing that I've noticed for how the Panthers have been getting to him.
The problem is, and God bless him, I love Stuart Skinner, he cheats. He does not have the athleticism of an elite goalie, so he's constantly leaning a little bit. And one problem he really has, and if you're familiar, if you're not the best of athlete and you know you need to rock yourself a little bit to jump, like you think about if you're about to like try and touch the rim in gym when you were in high school, how you needed to rock your body a bunch of times to wind yourself up. It's the same principle, where Skinner will be square, but he knows which way he needs to lean, so he starts subtly going that way. Or if he's already down and he's on a post and he needs to get over, He needs to move himself to the way he's going from, to jerk himself back all the way across. And it just makes him look that much slower. I know there were a number of chances in game 3 where I felt he had made a really slow and frankly poor read. And that's because of his limitations. And he's entirely overachieved for what he is. You know, he got thrown to the Wolves 2 years ago and he made the All-Star team as a rookie. He won like 40 games. But at this point, he's a below average NHL goalie, and the Oilers need to do more to protect him. They can't be taking all of these penalties. They can't be putting the Panthers, whose power play is humming like this. And I know you wanted to talk about Skinner, so I'll throw it back to you with the premise. First of all, I don't know. If they started Pickard tonight, I wouldn't be surprised. If they start Skinner tonight, if it's 2 goals, if it's 3 goals, I don't have a great feel for it because Chris Knobloch's patient. It's weird. He is always very patient and very cool about any of these decisions. And he's like the complete opposite of any of us who all are running around with our hair on fire, screaming, hey, call timeout. Hey, change the goalie. It's just really jarring. And hey, it's worked so far. I give him the benefit of the doubt. But man, sitting here right now, it's not the most comforting thing in the world.
Yeah, honestly, when with a kind of fan base that Edmonton is, who loves their hockey and who's just craving to want to see this team win the Stanley Cup in 35 years, and the fact that the personality of the coach is a little bit different, very stoic of him for how he handles things, and he's had Stuart Skinner's back ever since Game 3. Yeah, you don't put everything on him. You mentioned the fact that if they're going to commit those many penalties, you're not doing your goalie a good service. You're doing him a disservice there. But I'm wondering what is the leash for Stuart Skinner? Is it 2 goals in general that he gives up in the first period? Is it 2 in the first 10? How I don't think he's going to go full Pete DeBoer on Jake Ottinger from the Western Conference Final. So where do you see
crazy? That was absolutely crazy. I mean, there's an argument Jake Ottinger is the Stars' best player, and they yanked him less than 10 minutes into that game. The short answer is I don't know. My general personal rule of thumb, the way I've always thought about this is, it depends on the quality of the goals. Like, if there's nothing he could do, there's nothing you can do. I can live with that. But if they're stinkers, I think if you give up 2 goals in the first 5 minutes, I think that's the argument. I think if it's 3 in the first 10, and then if it's 4-0 at the end of the first, I think then you would come out to start the second with your backup goalie. But I know Knobloch had teased we're looking at one potential lineup change. I don't think that's Pickard for Skinner. I would be very, very surprised if it was. I think that's maybe going 7 defensemen, 11 forwards, bringing Stetcher back in, or maybe bringing Jeff Skinner in. I don't know who would come out if they wanted to bring Skinner in, which is why I don't think that would be the case, because they need Janmark for faceoffs. Otherwise, you can maybe say him. Connor Brown kills penalties. They need him there. Evander Kane, as dumb as those penalties were, he's too good of a player to take out because you need offense right now, and they need the offense Evander Kane is capable of generating at times, even if he does take a lot of penalties. So they have a lot of questions. I don't have a lot of answers. This game setting up very climactically. I mean, the 2-1 swing game, it's not quite the 2-2, like 80% of the teams that win game 5 at 2-2 win the series, but it's going to set up a very daunting task, because it's hard for me to believe that the Oilers would be capable of winning 3 straight games should they lose game 4. I just think that would be, I don't want to say impossible, but very unlikely. So it's almost essential, the can't win or must lose, the can't lose or must win. It's a can't lose and you got to win. There's no good answer here. The Oilers really need to come out with a great effort. If they lose the way they did in game 2, you don't feel good about it, but you can live with it. If they lose the way they did in game 3, you can't live with that.
Yeah, and for the Panthers, they got to treat this as a must win. As great as they have been on the road, you don't want to take another chance in having to go into Edmonton's environment to try to get one more in order to win the Stanley Cup. As much as confident as they are, and the great thing about the Panthers here is, I know we talked about line matches a little bit. Paul Maurice also spoke about how earlier in the playoffs he was trying so hard to line match. Barkov has been against McDavid throughout the first 3. It hasn't mattered whether it's been home and away, but he's also been in the position. He spoke about it mostly today about how he's able to trust his players more. And I'm interested to see how much more of that trust he implements in game 3, as once again they'll be at home and looking to have a little bit of a stranglehold right before they go back to Edmonton on Saturday night.
That will do it for this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers. We want to thank everyone that made our shows their first listen of the day. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night over on the Locked On NHL feed. Be so kind, subscribe, leave comments, leave reviews if you're listening to the audio version on Apple or Spotify. Those help the shows out tremendously. Everyone enjoy the Stanley Cup Finals.